our tip and technique today I want to talk about one of my favorite ways to make a quilt, which is Fusible Applique. This behind me is our Rising from the Ashes quilt. She is all done with Fusible Applique. And I love the art form of Fusible Applique because you can do something very simplistic, or you can do something complex like this. Or you can do something in the middle like our Skip to Dessert, which is this guy right here. So I want to today run through the steps of how to do Fusible Applique and how we design the patterns here to make it super, super easy for you. The first thing we do when we design our patterns is we want to make sure that you get the templates full size and reverse. So let me see if I can get the light here so you can see that. So if it's a little project like this little fishy, those are his templates. If it's a larger project like the Skip to Dessert, you're going to get a full sheet in our pattern with all of the templates broken apart and labeled and reversed for Fusible Applique, as well as a placement drawing on how to put it together. So what I'm going to go through today are the steps for Fusible Applique, how to use a placement drawing, how to use an applique pressing sheet, which is one of the biggest tools we use here in the studio, a little bit about our fusible web, and how to rip out blanket stitching if you make a mistake when sewing. So I'm going to turn the camera down so you can see what we're doing, and then we're going to get started on our Fusible Applique tips and techniques. Alright, that should be good. Make sure you guys can see everything. Alright, so this is the most important part, is that you can actually see the board. I'm going to spend my whole 20 minutes fixing the camera. Alright, so now we have this. So the first thing you do is, with your pattern, is you get your fusible web. I like to use Trans Web, and I like to use Heat and Bond Featherlight. They are both very good brands. Heat and Bond Featherlight's a little easier to find, where Trans Web is a little bit harder. They're both very lightweight. The difference between them is that Heat and Bond Featherlight, you have to make sure you turn your heat on your iron down to medium, where Trans Web is just super durable. It doesn't matter what your iron's on, it always works. So the other thing is you need to trace your shapes onto the Fusible Web, and Fusible Web has a paper side and a glue side. So you want to put glue side down on the paper, and you want to put the paper side up, and then I recommend using the Sharpie Ultra Fine Point markers to trace your shapes with, because the tip of an ultra fine Sharpie marker is the same width as your scissor blade when you go to cut. So when you go to cut your shapes out, you're not guessing which side of the line to cut on. So you just trace it onto the Fusible Web. And then in all of our patterns, we do a label everything. So you would want to write on here, this says 2A in purple. Purple tells you the fabric. This pattern has 2A, B, C, D to show you it's the second fish, and that's part A. So you want to put your notes onto here. And then once you have all your pieces traced, you then roughly cut out each shape. So you can see here I did not cut on the line. I cut outside the line about 1/8 of an inch. Doesn't really matter as long as it's outside the line. And then you're going to iron this onto the fabric. And you want to do this because now when I cut the shape out on the line, it's going to be, all these edges will be sealed in glue. So you cut it, you do that, then you just cut it out. Now here's a couple, we all learned how to cut in kindergarten, I know, but I'm going to show you a couple tips on cutting applique, because it can make a difference between if your edges are smooth or raggedy. And raggedy edges are harder to work with. So when I cut my shapes, I am back here in the back side of my scissors. I'm not up at the tip. It gives you much more control. And you'll see I cut the shape and I rotate the fabric, not the scissors. Okay? Obviously I can't cut and talk at the same time. So you rotate the fabric into the scissors. You do not move the scissors. The scissors did not move at all while I cut that. So that's how you cut out your shapes. Then once you have all your shapes done, it's time to pull out your placement drawing. And so this is an applique pressing sheet. This is the Appli-Fuse Mat from Dipsy Quilter. The other applique pressing sheet we use is the it's called an applique pressing sheet. Both of which you can see the placement drawing through. We sell both sheets, so there you can see it on that one. The difference is, the way I like to compare them is they both work great. This one is more of an economical applique pressing sheet. It's $21. I think this one is $38. This one's very thin. This one has got some thickness to it. This one, the toner from your pattern will build up on the sheet and you have to clean it off. It cleans right off. It's not a big deal. I've used these sheets for years and years. This one, I have not had any toner build up on it yet, and so I don't have to worry about it cleaning it up or anything. This one, when you put the iron on this one though, it slides. It's smooth. There's no grip. When you put the iron on this, it grips the iron. The grippiness, though, helps you when you're putting together intricate pieces, because it will also grip your pieces. They won't move around. Where if I put this piece on here, it slides. You put it on here, it doesn't slide. So if you have a problem with your pieces moving, you definitely want to go with this sheet. If you're just learning how to do this, you don't know if you're really going to like it, I would go with the more economical sheet, which is why we sell both. If you've had this one for years, try this one. It is an excellent tool, which is why I'm using it today. So you first slide your placement drawing underneath the applique pressing sheet so you can see your drawing, and then you have to start building your piece, and you do need to remove the paper from the back. So you use a straight pin, score the fin, score the paper, and it creates a crack and peel. So then the paper just comes right off. You do not want to peel all your papers off as I've done today, because I know where the pieces go. You don't want to do it until you're ready to assemble, because these letters correlate with the placement drawing. So you don't want to take all the letters off and then not have them as your guide. So once you have you're ready to build. So how I build these appliques, especially the more complex ones, is I start with the smallest piece and build it in sections. So that would be the eye. So for this guy right here, there's the piece for that. I would lay that on my applique pressing sheet. It's not sliding, but the little dot, I can see where it goes through the white, so I don't have to worry about guessing, and I lay that on there and I press. Then I would do the same with the next eye. And with white, it's always tricky. You cannot always see which side has the fusible, so always double check. And so once those are done, then you can peel these off and put the actual fish part underneath. Now you can see here that this eye is behind this eye. So I can lay this guy on here and lay that guy on there. Now I can't see where that goes. So here's a tip for you. You fold this back to where the edge of the white is, and you press. And then you can fold it down where the top of the white is and press. And that gives me a cross section that I know this eye goes right there. So you don't have to guess. And the same with this guy. He's going to go there. And you just press those again. Now the eyes are done, so I don't have to worry about it. Same thing with this side fin. I can see it. I'm going to lay this down. I'm going to lay this on top. So I'm building it in components. And this makes doing fusible applique so much easier than trying to guess where everything goes and try to position it. Now when I draw these appliques, I spend a lot of time on the eyes. So I want to make sure that your eyes come out the same as the drawing. Don't look at these eyes, I just did it quickly. But I want to show you this. So here is the yellow. It extends past my purple. It could have been I cut it wrong, I traced it wrong. But before you build the fish, you can take scissors and trim that yellow up so it matches the fin exactly. It looks like it's exactly what you wanted. So you can do that. And then we have the top fin, but I didn't cut that out, so we're not going to worry about that one. And then we have the lips. And again, I can't see where this goes. So I press down to get the top of the lips, and I press over here to get where the lips end, and then I use those 2 crease marks as my positioning for the lips. The lips are what make this guy. So then we've got that. So now we're ready to build the whole fish. So now we peel all these sections up, but you can see how I'm building it in components. And then we take the body of the fish and we lay it down. And again, I can't see where that middle fin is, so I go down, cross, over, cross. I mean, you can eyeball it. There's nothing to say you can't eyeball it. It's your fish. I'm just giving you a guide. But this is how all our applique patterns are built, including the Phoenix Rising, which is behind me. And so when we're done, I'll pan back up and show you. If you look at it in that respect, it is not a hard quilt to make. It is a time-consuming quilt, but we give you all the templates. We give you a placement drawing for each wing and the body. And so there's our fish. He's all done. So we're going to, except for his top fin. So we're going to pull him off of here. And there you go. And you can see there's nothing on the applique pressing sheet. So then once you have your fish done, now this is a fish facing the other way, but once you have your fish done, you can then put him on your background and you can position just the fish. You don't have to have a million parts. You have one fish that you then iron on. Now you have to finish your edges of these pieces. So now that we have that pressed down, I'm going to jump over here. We finish the edges with a blanket stitch. That is the traditional way to finish the edges, but that doesn't mean you couldn't do a zigzag stitch or a satin stitch or just any of the decorative stitches on your machine. But when you do a blanket stitch, if you have a place where here, I went right above it. I went out. I want to rip that out. I don't like it. Well, if you need to rip your blanket stitch, you take a seam ripper, hopefully a sharp one, and you use the blade of the seam ripper, see if I can get it up here so you can see, into the back of the piece, into the bites, not into the edge, but where it bites into the fabric. And you just break those stitches along. And then you can pull from the front the stitch and it'll all come right out. You don't want to work on the front because this will cause those edges to fray. Even though they're sealed in glue, they can fray up on you. So you do all of your ripping on the back, bring it to the front, and then you can snip that off and then you can go back in and restitch it. When you go to do your blanket stitch on your machine or any decorative stitch, you want to make sure you use an open toe foot. And this is what an open toe foot looks like. It has no bar, no clear, no anything. It is just open. And that way when you're stitching, you can see exactly what you need to see and you don't have anything impeding your view. There's also usually a center bar or center mark on your foot. At least all of my Bernina feet are that way. And you run that center right along the edge so that the blanket stitch, the straight of the blanket stitch goes in the background and the bite goes into the petals. There is a video on our YouTube channel. It's an in-depth view about how, it's a camera view on the sewing machine about how to do this stitch. That took 15 minutes on its own, so I didn't put it into today's tips, but please make sure you go check out our YouTube channel, The Whimsical Workshop. Subscribe while you're there, and you can check out how to finish those stitches. So here is the quilt we started with. This is Rising from the Ashes. So this is one of our most complex fusible applique patterns, which is why I'm showing it to you. The majority of our patterns are like our Skip to Dessert, it's basic, it's easy because they're big, chunky, fat pieces, but this guy is complex and I wanted to share him with you. So when you get this pattern, you get all the templates broken out and labeled for each flame. Then you get a template, a placement drawing for the left wing, a placement drawing for the right wing, and a placement drawing for the body. So everything I just showed you is how you do something this complex. So I love this technique because as an artist, I can draw anything and turn it into a quilt. But at the same point, as a beginner quilter, it is very accessible and very easy to do if you use an applique pressing sheet and placement drawings, which is why 90% of our patterns have a placement drawing. If it doesn't, it's because it's so simplistic you wouldn't need this. Otherwise, if it has any complexity to it, it has a placement drawing. They all have full-size reverse templates, you know, to size, so you don't have to go blow them up. And those are the things you want to look for in an applique pattern. The placement drawing, are the templates full-size? Is it easy to do? Are the pieces chunky or really tiny? The tinier the piece and the more detailed the piece, the harder it will be to finish. Where the bigger the pieces and the chunkier the pieces, the easier they are. And my last piece of advice is because unless you're like me and you blanket stitch all the time, doing a finished edge stitch on applique is just like quilting, and you kind of have to warm up before you jump into it. So I always recommend having little scraps, like this is a AccuQuilt Go die of a flower, a heart, or a star. Just have a couple little squares like this by your machine. Before you jump into your quilt, you can then practice on this first. And that brings in one more thing, is about thread. I like to use 50 weight thread. If you're just beginning, you want to make sure the thread colors match your pieces. This one is also, I didn't want a big outline, so all the threads match. This one you can see the black, and the black just pops. So if you want your outline to pop like a cartoon or a comic book, use black, use 40 weight thread. I use only Aurifil thread, so there's a shout out to them. They're the best thread that I've come across. If you want your stitching to disappear, use 50 weight thread. I haven't tried 60 weight thread, but it is thinner, so you can try that as well. Either match your colors, or if you're doing dull colors, use a dull gray. Pastel colors, use a dull gray. It'll disappear into all of them. You just take one strand of thread, lay it on your pieces that you want to finish, and see how it will pop. So those are all of my tips and a quick run through on how to do Fusible Applique the Whimsical Workshop way. Let me know if you have any questions. I am watching your comments to see if anyone has any questions. If not, you can check out all of the patterns at thewhimsicalworkshop.com. You can find us on YouTube at The Whimsical Workshop, and we're on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest. All of those links are on our website at the top, so you can just link there to see us. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Again, thanks for checking in. Have a good day. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, make sure you like and subscribe below. You can find The Whimsical Workshop on our website, thewhimsicalworkshop.com, and that has all links to all of our other social media platforms. Thanks for joining us.